Hello everybody, my name is Squaggy, and welcome back to another sloppy question time. It's a little bit of slop, but we can all enjoy slop sometimes. Today I want to talk about the fights in the Vanguard anime, keeping it very simple and pretty positive. What are your favorite fights from the Cardfight Vanguard anime and why? And this question isn't limited to just the D series, it's also from the OG series, the G series, the V series I guess. Because let's face it, if I asked you all what your favorite D standard fight would be, I would just get all the hype moments and aura Akina check crit fights. I want something new. So I'll get to my answer, Krono versus Kamui at the end of Gear's Crisis, I believe this is the season it's in. This is a really good mentor versus student kind of fight. A really good fight from OG versus the G series anime, which they really liked to do during the Gears Crisis arc, right? Bringing back all the old characters and letting the new ones kind of face them as obstacles. This, I think, hits a lot harder than something like Krono versus Aichi and even Akina versus Yuyu, because these characters have a relationship that's built up. It's not just, oh my god, remember this guy from the OG anime? It's actually got a lot of weight to it. It's a pretty emotional fight. Kamui shows a good understanding of what Krono can do. Kamui's reasoning for trying to stop Krono from winning is really good. It's not just a test of whether he's ready, it's also Kamui feeling like everyone around him has suffered some kind of magical fate that he hasn't, and it's a bit of like a survivor's guilt kind of angle to his character. I really like that, especially for the character that started off really young and, you know, in grade school. It makes sense that all the weirdo shit that happens to everyone around him but him is kind of taking a toll on his mental, and now his new kind of friend slash student is undergoing the same thing. That's a really cool dynamic, and it's backed by Krono, who wants to prove that he is ready. And also this is where the G Guardians kind of come to a head, right? These three fights in hindsight, I mean, obviously they're just advertisements for the new Fighters collection that was out at the time, which introduced the G Guardian mechanic, and I think it was really cool to see Kamui use a G Guardian to stop Chronojet Dragon's attack, which has been kind of Krono's pattern the whole rest of the series. Okay, that's it from me. Let's see what you guys came up with. Shion versus Shouma always makes me laugh because of a simple, let me count how many triggers are out, which was groundbreaking for the Vanguard anime at the time. We came a long way from Aichi, Kai, and Krono just giving all their effects to the Vanguard, and here is Shion actually making decisions. A great answer, utilizing the GOAT, Shion, and also one of the greatest villains of Vanguard, Shouma. Shouma is a fantastic villain for exactly Shion, and this is kind of the peak of their kind of antagonism towards each other. It's kind of a moment you just gotta look at and go, huh, I guess nobody else does that. And even Shouma is like, oh shit, right, you can do that. And I think it's really cool to watch a character make kind of a decision calculus based on what they think their opponent will flip. It gives a lot of character to Shion, who's built up a lot throughout this season, who has to start from nothing yet again, build himself back up, and now is showing a ton of skill in the game itself. It's really good character growth, it's an incredibly funny moment from a meta perspective, but it also makes it so that Shion's victory feels very earned, because he really did weigh the cost and benefit of that no guard, and it paid off for him. If Vanguard said, Lord of the Fight, Misaki versus Asuka round 2, the strategy, the fight choreography, the stack. This episode made me fall in love with playing Vanguard. So many people in like YouTube comments and Twitter, they all just say, oh yeah, I wanted to play Tsukuyomi because of Misaki versus Asuka round 2. And I mean, you can't do that in standard, you know, but you can do it in Shadowverse. But for what it's worth, yes, this fight is really good, and it is a fight that feels very earned. Much like all of AL4 and versus Q4 round 2, this fight has a really good build up from the first round, which if you're unfamiliar, in Asuka versus Misaki round 1, Misaki loses that fight, and it's kind of attributed to the fact that she can't see past why Asuka swinging at a silent Tom, and thus she no longer has kill pressure on her, you know, kill turn. But now in round 2, it's completely flipped around. Asuka can't see that Misaki is planned even further ahead than her this time and has completely stacked the deck in her favor. So Misaki loses because she can't see far enough in round 1, and in round 2, she wins because she can. That's pretty good storytelling. It's also the kind of thing you can only do when you have like a million episodes in between the first fight and the second fight. You can actually build up a character and you can build up their skills. And it's just so satisfying to see Misaki just torch Asuka. So, great answer. McCrafter says, Kai versus Gaillard round 2 makes me ill from how good it was. A lot of the Legion fights are, you know, they're bad. They're not very good. You know, the whole season isn't particularly good. This fight in particular is really, really good. Kai gets to finally embrace who he really is rather than trying to be indebted to Aichi and always be playing Seekers. He can instead play Kagero, which is kind of his clan. And it's incredibly satisfying to just watch him do the Trinity Crimson Flame and watch his smug ass grin happen when he does it. You know, Kai can be a bit of an asshole, but I think that's kind of him. And it's really satisfying to watch him go back to that instead of only being like, oh, my mates, oh, Aichi. You finally get to see him go, I'm going to kill you. And that's fun. Plus the reveal that Vortex Dragon doesn't proc trigger effects is so wonderful. It's such a hype moment in the anime. Axel says, gonna give it to Danji versus Michiru at the end of Will Dress Season 2. The stakes were high. Seeing Danji ride Jojo was the pinnacle of the match. Plus it was the last time Danji was relevant. Let's not talk about Will Dress Season 3. What do you mean Will Dress ends at Season 2? This fight is really, really good. This is my favorite fight in all of D Standard. Even with Divine Z out, I still think this fight is kind of the peak of it, right? They get really into a slugfest by the end where they have to rely on defensives, where they have to rely on opponents not checking certain things. The stakes are really high, but there's a bit of a levity to it. Both players are kind of having a bit of a blast as they go around. The ending to this fight is incredible. Drajo and Bruce kept to work together to beat Drajo Mask, which I mean if you played the game in real life at the time, as far as I'm aware, you didn't really need much to beat Drajo Mask, but it was hype in the anime. Not to mention again, this is a fight with a lot of personal stakes. It's not just a protagonist has to beat an antagonist, they are friends. They are established to be trusted comrades. So this fight feels like it's really earned between the two. You get to see a bit of their relationship get built up in Will Dress Season 1, you get to see them through a couple more flashbacks, you get to see the intensity to which Danji really wants to save Michiru, and thus the fight can feel very earned. I'm sorry to keep harping on this, but you have to build up character relations in order for future fights to feel really satisfying. It just has to happen. Before the video continues, I just want to advertise, I do have a Ko-Fi. I'm not going to paywall any content. Obviously, I don't really have a lot to paywall. But if you'd like to support the channel and what I do, and you want to see me, maybe try to upload a bit more regularly, maybe improve this microphone of mine, then any help would be appreciated. You don't have to donate. Just want to put it out there in case you do want to support the channel and what I do. Okay, back to the video. Mari has 2 over here, but I just want to focus on number 2. Even though I think number 1 is a fun fight, I think it's really good and emotional. At least the ending of it is. I really like when Future Hikari does hug Akina and break down crying because, it's a life she never really got to live, to have her brother around her still. But I want to talk more about number 2, the Will Dress Season 1 finale fight. Seeing Yuyu and Reika pour their heart out and soul in the clash was a ride. One of the things that makes Will Dress Season 1 work very well relative to how Deluxe in Divine Z works is that in Deluxe, it does matter that Akina wins because he wants to go pro. That is his stated reason. It's not a very good reason, but it is his reason. And because of that, it's important that he wins Deluxe. It doesn't really matter who he's up against, as long as the end result of that tournament is that he wins Deluxe. Will Dress Season 1 is very different in that regard, because there are more personal stakes. It's not actually about winning Deluxe. Obviously, you want your protagonist to win the tournament arc, that's what, they do in Shonen, but the story beat here isn't, oh, Yuyu has to win Deluxe because, the writing staff said so. Yuyu has to beat Reika, and Reika has to beat Yuyu, vice versa. Not for some grander prize necessarily, but to prove that their way of fighting is correct or is valid. Throughout Will Dress Season 1, Reika kind of gets pushed and pushed and pushed into kind of accepting the fact that some of the counterfighters are real threats. Think Reika versus Toya, where Reika at the end has to kind of admit, yeah, some of you are really good at the game. And Yuyu also has to start the season by admitting, oh yeah, you guys trying to go pro, that's a valid way to play Vanguard, you guys are very good at the game. And by the end of it, Yuyu has to beat Reika specifically. It can't be Michiru, who's kind of more of a final boss red herring figure. It has to be Reika because he's kind of the other side of the coin of Vanguard for Yuyu. The guy who takes things super seriously versus the guy who does take it seriously but is also very casual about the game. It's, I think, what Will Dress Season 3 is supposed to be about as well. But Yuyu versus Reika does it so much better because they are so much more aggressive towards one another almost because they have personal relationships with one another. Especially at the point in the fight where they both say, I don't understand you. That's a fantastic moment. Normally in a lot of anime it's like, oh yeah, I finally understand you now, why you fight? Here it's them saying, I fucking hate you, I'm going to kill you now. And then they understand each other finally, but they have to start by not. And that's really important. Calamity says, honestly I just love every fight Ren does, but this one was so funny. Ren playing core and purpose was great. Again, Legion Mate, not a good season. Do not be tricked into rewatching that. But this fight in particular is kind of fun. You as the audience already know Ren is fucking lying, and Kai is really pouring his heart out trying to prove that he's better. And I'm pretty sure at the end they just revealed that Ren was gonna win that game anyways, but lets him win so he can reveal information. It tells us 2 things. 1, Ren is a giant fucking asshole, which, based. And second of all, it also shows Kai's not ready, which is why he has to then swap back into Perditions. Really good build-up. K says, and also a few of you gave me this answer, so think of this as, kind of embodying all of you, right? Aichi versus Kai 2 in Link Joker. No fight since then has had the same intensity, emotional stakes, and passion put into the animations and voice lines. Little kid me watching this live made me fall in love with Vanguard forever as a show. This is, I guess, probably the most, I don't like to use this word because it's an opinions-based thread, but most correct answer probably, right? This is what the show has been building up to almost this whole time. An Aichi versus Kai fight where both are kind of at their best. It also is really interesting in how they use Kai's character. I used to see a lot of comments where they were saying, oh, it's really weird that Kai decided to join the reverse, but his whole philosophy is that, oh, true strength comes from within. But the whole point is that he's starting to think that maybe it doesn't, because the best players he knows are cheaters, kind of. They all have psyqualia, and he's just a normal dude in the original anime. So it makes sense to use that insecurity as the segue into why he has to accept this kind of darker power. And as he says later on, yes, Break Your Spell is a very good use of the theme song here. The stakes are really high. And it's not because the world is ending. The world is ending is almost secondary to that. The stake is that they might lose Kai. And if they lose to Kai, then it proves that he's kind of right. He's right that going solo to seek out strength is the right path. But he can't be right. Of course he's not right. That's not how, shonen operates. It's not how almost the real world operates. You have to have people in your life who support you. And that's why, Aichi's gold paladins show him the counter to that. It shows in the gameplay. It shows in how they've acted the whole season. Aichi has been gathering a bunch of fighters who work with him. Kai and Takuro have been gathering fighters that work for them. And thus it builds up into one of the greatest fights ever, just, by the emotional stakes. It's beautiful, it's great. Aichi versus Kai in Legion Mate is similar, but it's a very different dynamic, obviously. So yeah, ton of fun. This fight is great. Go rewatch this fight, it holds up. Leah says, I love the Mirei versus Yuyu round 2. The constant back and forth, Yuyu managing to reach Mirei's heart, and the impact the fight had on Mirei, which carried over in her future battles against Urara, Haruka, and Gi. Yuyu really changed her for the better. Again, correct. I think it is really understandable when people don't like Overdress Season 1. I think that season is not good, but I think that season is really good foundational work for someone like Yuyu to then be important in Overdress Season 2 in beating Mirei. It just can't be that Yuyu can even come close to her if not for Overdress Season 1. And by the end of that fight, Mirei kind of realizes she's wrong, apologizes to all the clan she took the flags from, and that is a good scene. I just really like the dichotomy between Trickstar and Trick Moon. I like kind of the idea that Trickstar was Mirei's original card. That's why Danji had it. And now it kind of comes back in the form of Yuyu, who is kind of pre all the trauma Mirei, I guess. In that, yeah, you can have fun. You don't have to be constantly on edge and antagonistic towards everyone who may be antagonistic to you. You can treat people with kindness, and that lets you move forward, which is why she earns Verlord later on. I don't know, really like Mirei as a character. I think she's fantastic. Swolsire has a pretty different answer, but I think this is a good encapsulation of that fight. Nothing beats Shinemon freaking out about summoning Valkyrion in the real world, then going, oh shit, I made a libum. I kind of briefly watched V-Series as a kid, teenager I guess, just because I was kind of loosely into Vanguard at that point. And it's kind of one of those moments that just sticks with you. What's his name? Tatsuya, is it? Versus Shinemon, where he's on a Valkyrion versus Makumelev. That fight really sticks with me. And just kind of the awe and scale at Shinemon looking at Valkyrion huge for the first time in kind of the summoning to Earth. I think that is a really good encapsulation of that fight. I think the stakes are kind of feel really grand. I think a lot of the time when they talk about units coming to Earth in the Vanguard series, it's kind of a loose thing. It's oh, they can do that, I guess. And it's never given a lot of gravitas, I feel. This is a moment that's oh shit, what we're doing is kind of dangerous. And oh shit, I can't let him get away with doing this. I think it creates a really good stake. And I think, of course, yet again, it is important that Tatsuya and Shin know each other from the get-go. And then they have this big emotional fight. It is really important to set up your characters. Nedge the Great says, my GOAT Ren versus Asuka in the original Link Joker arc. The dynamic and storytelling was just peak gaming and anime to me. Okay, this fight's really cool. It's cool because it taps into kind of Asuka's insecurity that's been building up the whole season. Obviously there's the haha, a woman is jealous of another woman. That's, kind of whatever to me. But I think it does have something really interesting to say about how it feels to constantly feel like you're second best, but almost third wheel. Asaka is probably the weakest member of the original AL4 trio sans Kyo. Ren's always talking up Kai. I'm sure Asuka doesn't feel great about that, and she shows she doesn't feel great about that. Ren has a lot of belief in Suiko that he doesn't need to express for Asuka because he thinks it comes through naturally, but reverse Asuka kind of shows that insecurity within her that he's not expressing it because he doesn't believe in me, which isn't true. And I think it's really important that in this fight, Ren always kind of feels like he's on the back foot. In the fight with Suiko prior to this, it really does feel like Ren doesn't give a shit. Like, he gives a shit about Locke for a bit, but by the end of it, he's pretty calm. This is one of the rare fights where Ren is pissed, because, again, the personal stake is the accusation that he doesn't care about Asuka, which to him is not true. He does. And I also think it's really great that he's always rewriting Mordred. The gameplay here is pretty cool. Instead of it being a flashy, I'm just gonna keep riding my big boss unit and I'm gonna hope that I pull a Raging Form, which is what he does for most of this season. Instead, it's, I'm going to beat you in a battle of attrition by being able to call out Blaster Darks, who will keep removing your stuff, so you're forced to keep calling out more things, and eventually you're gonna be exhausted and I'm gonna grind you out with Mordred Phantom Beatdown. That is kind of an interesting gameplay idea, because it shows kind of a backup strategy for Red. He's not just a Raging Form bot. I don't know, really like this answer, really like this fight. Here on YouTube, Krono vs Ryuzu Round 3 from True Trickson 6496. It's the finale of Strikegate. It's the culmination of this era of 3 seasons, and it really shows. The plays are pretty back and forth and entertaining. The cards used are interesting. You know, the dialogue could have used a bit more time in the oven, but it was a great time. Still their favorite. And I agree, I really like this fight as well. While the dialogue for that fight isn't amazing, you go back and watch how Ryuzu justifies his plan, like, throughout the season, you know, because he gets multiple episodes to do so, and how he justifies them here, and how Krono has found his resolve, and you compare that to how Gabrielius kind of justifies what he does in the Paralactic Clash, and it's just a bit night and day almost. It makes this fight look like Citizen Kane. I just think that the setup is really good, and I think the way that Krono wins is good. Ryuzu is always looking for the perfect future, right? That's what Demiurge is supposed to represent. It's a fake, perfect future, which Krono beats, obviously, through, you know, his shuffle technique, which is really funny. But then you look at what Gear Groovy represents in that fight. Gear Groovy is using your past to push yourself forward rather than, you know, deny it, and to make a perfect future that can be so easily manipulated. That's why Gear Groovy copies the past, because it learns from it, and it becomes a bit more than just the sum of its parts. If you go back and watch the fight choreography is also not so bad. I think a lot of G-era fights are actually quite bad, but I think this fight in particular is done decently well. And the actual animation of, like, the units being on Earth and causing destruction is kind of like what Shinemon's fight with Tatsuya does. It shows the scale of destructions the units can bring and why it's a bad idea to have these worlds be so directly intertwined. Why it's wrong to bring these units over here and why it's wrong for us to interfere with them so directly. I don't know, this is just a really good answer, one of my favorite fights in the show. RR271003 says, fights with Ninja Master M versus Reverse Nagisa and Tonori. I love how he uses Nubatama's hand advantage to guard multiple attacks from aggressive decks. Ninja Master M versus Reverse Nagisa has zero reason to go as hard as it does. There is almost zero kind of plot reason for this fight to happen. It's kind of like if they showed the fight of Kyo versus the Brilliant Stars guy on screen. Like, why would you do that? These are two minor characters. It's basically filler because you can skip this fight and you'll still basically get the full story. You just have to accept that Ninja Master M beats Reverse Nagisa off screen. But this fight goes crazy hard. It's the first time we see Ethics Buster Reverse, who's such a huge threat. 8 attacks, and Ninja Master M lives through it all. And he only lives through it through a 6 damage heal. Because they're both minor characters, I mean, we expect Ninja Master M to win, but there's a real possibility that Reverse Nagisa is too much and becomes the final boss for Kamui. That is an interesting setup. A fight where the characters are kind of, you know, not necessarily worthless, but less plot relevant, that anything can happen. And that's fun. We need more fights like that. Ignis says, Yuyu versus Akina. Very fun fight. Definitely not biased with Yuyu being my favorite character. And you know, you're allowed to be biased. Everyone's a little biased here. It's cool from a meta perspective because we all know that these are the two main characters fighting one another. But in universe, it's just kind of another fight. And I wish they had some time to just talk. I wish there was kind of an episode or something where Yuyu and Akina get to hang out for a bit. Where maybe Akina's feeling kind of shaken by how badly Raika beats him. It's like, who was the last guy to beat him? Oh, it's Yuyu. And then he goes out to seek him out, I guess. Is that what happens in the episode? Is that what happens in the episode? Hold on. You know what? This is a pretty good reason. Never mind. Scratch my original stuff. This is a fine reason, I suppose. That, it's a little cut off on my screen, but that's why I want to experience the fight that inspired my sister back then. That's fine. I don't hate that reason. I wish it was a little more personal, but I guess this is personal still, right? The fight itself isn't bad either. Ars Virina shows really nicely. It really shows what a gap in kind of almost skill that the two have. It also is one of the few episodes, surprisingly, that lets Akina talk about himself, that lets him kind of be himself, kind of. A lot of the time, characters die for Akina, or they do something and Akina gets inspired or whatnot, and that's fine, but it just happens so often that Akina feels like a blank slate kind of character. For once, Akina talks about what the units in his deck mean to him. Every fight, he rides Swole, so he gets a new Swole. Everyone fights with him. It feels, like this is his character moment. Far be it from me to say that the protagonist deserves some of his own, character development in his show, but yeah, more moments like this, and I might even believe that Akina is interesting to watch. I don't think he is, but this fight could trick you if this was the only episode you watched. I don't know, I think it's just weird that one of Akina's best moments comes from kind of almost a filler fight. So, what have we learned from this thread? We should just bring Ren Suzugamori back. That would boost the ratings so much in this show. Alright, that's it from me. Bye-bye. Thank you to my supporters on Ko-Fi, Lang Long, and Big Ben. Thank you for helping the Scraggy conglomerate produce more great content. I mean, technically, I guess this is a fight.